I want to invite the next speakers. It will be a workshop on team formation. So, Naïma, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I hope you've had a really inspiring 24 hours so far and are excited about the weekend ahead. I'll be talking about team formation. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Ownership. Let's start off with a few questions. What is a company? It's a legal entity. It's the NASDAQ. It's the City of London. It's Silicon Valley. And what is a founder? It's these guys, right? They're overwhelmingly male, university educated, and white. Now that I've defined terms, it's time to redefine them. What is a company? We have our own definition. For me, a company is a group of people that are working towards a shared goal. There are actually 300 million founders around the world today that are working on 150 million businesses. In fact, we're in the middle of a startup boom with more companies and teams springing up all over the world than we've ever seen before. This is in Japan, this is in the UK, this is all around the world. There are more and more people who are looking to build their own businesses. So we've established that a company is often a group of people that are collaborating, but who makes up this group? I used to hear a lot about the 3 H's for a startup team, and this was 3 different people that contributed. One was the hacker, this is the developer, the person who codes, the one who is building the product. The hipster, this is the designer or the creator, and the hustler is the businessman or woman who is cutting deals, who is working towards getting investment. And increasingly, I think it's not really about these 3 different types of people. It's about finding a team that is working towards that united goal. And the hardest thing by far is to get started. And the team won't look like the team 1 year from now or 5 years from now will look nothing like the team that exists today. But really, the most important thing is to start. And teams are changing. We're now in this remote first world. There are startups that are coming together that are distributed across different geographies and continents. And they're taking sometimes weeks, months, or years before they even meet each other because of the fact that we're working so differently now. We're also seeing a rise in the portfolio careers, so people who are working on a startup for 2 days a week and then freelancing for 3 days a week and using that money to fund their business. We're really changing the way that teams are coming together, and it's really fascinating to see. There are more entrepreneurs, more creators, and more roles that are popping up all around the world. What I will take from that hacker, hustler, and hipster group is that it's really important to have a complementary skill set. So people who are, if you're more commercially focused, someone who's more technical, and being able to bounce off each other and own the different spheres that you're contributing to. And one thing is for certain, and that is that the co-founder relationship is a really, really important one. And that early team will really influence the type of business that you create. And the noted investment company YC, they talk about 3 key reasons for the importance of this co-founder. Number 1 is productivity. So 2 or 3 heads are better than 1. And when you're working on such a wide array of different things in the early days, having those people to bounce off of is really key. And that moral support to be able to lift each other up through the intense highs and lows, and there will be many, and also the past successes of teams. So any household name that you see, they started off as a collective, as a group of people working towards something. And I'll add a few more to that list. I really think having the skill set to build, market and sell. It's very difficult to have this within just one person, and having different people who can own those three areas is really crucial. And another thing that I've noticed since being on this entrepreneur journey is that no one else will really get it. No one else will understand why you've chosen to be on this untrodden path to prove something that is not yet viable or potentially doesn't exist yet. And finally, it's fun. It's fun having someone to share it with, or some people to share it with. And as I said, those highs and lows can get quite intense. And so it's important to have a team that can lift you up. And when you're building that early team, there are a few questions you need to try and ask to work out if you have the same intentions of the business that you want to build. So, for example, if you're after going down the venture capital route and growing as quickly as possible, and really taking over and creating a new market, then that will not be aligned to someone who wants to create a lifestyle business, who wants to be able to fund their life through their business and get profit quite quickly. Another thing to really consider is finding out what position each person should take, and what milestones do you want to hit, and how do you want to get there. Another key area is equity, and we'll get to that as well. But most team conflicts are about these three things: the roles. So this is who does what, who's the CEO, who's the CTO, who's the COO, the relationships, so potentially personality clashes, and the rewards. And in most cases, this is equity. And really, in the early days of a startup, the reason why equity is so important is because there's not necessarily cash in the business quite yet. The way to think about equity, it's about who owns what of the business. And I know what you're thinking: isn't it a bit too premature to have this conversation when there is nothing yet of the business, or you're in the early stages of working out what that is? But I'd say it's never too soon to have that conversation about equity. And really, every co-founder is a shareholder in the business. If you're contributing and you're working towards making the business a reality, then you're a shareholder in the same way that an investor would be. And increasingly, we're seeing something called dynamic equity, which is really starting to take off. The traditional way to do things is to have fixed equity. So this is when you and your team members decide an equity split up front. You might decide, if there are 3 of you, to own 33% each. If there are 2 of you, to go straight down the middle and own 50-50. Dynamic equity is different. It means that team members are rewarded in exchange for their work and their contributions. And I'll tell you exactly how it works now. So you have a team, and they're all working together on something. They're working little by little, an hour here, an hour there. And over time, these hours start to accumulate. And in my mind, this is a company in essence, a series of contributions that come together and compound to create something. And the senior people earn slightly more than junior people. And as soon as you succeed, you're able to buy back that equity from those early contributors. And this is at a fixed price that you decide on. So for founders, this means that you get access to talent without cash, and you can buy that equity back on success. And it really means you can get people to start working on your idea immediately. And immediately they're incentivized, and they're excited for the promise of a reward down the road. For professionals, it means you get access to a wide range of startup opportunities, and you can start to build out secondary streams of income. And there are a few different options for how, if you want to go down the dynamic equity route. There are some founders that are creating their own makeshift solutions in spreadsheets using Excel. Others are opting for something called slicing pie, which is an equity calculator, a dynamic equity calculator. And ownership, which is the business that I'm working on, is a new way to do this as well. Some of the best practice, if you want to embark on using dynamic equity, is to have a trial period. So this is a period where you're testing the water with your new collaborator, and they're working towards really clear objectives. So for example, we had a CTO join our team, and he was rewarded with 5% equity once our app was secure, and then another 5% once we launched. So it was really clear for all parties when that equity would be rewarded. And the next thing I would say is to have a minimum time commitment as well. So we're seeing different teams all over the world that are working in this way, and it's really having a huge impact on the outcomes of the team, and how they collaborate together. And I'll leave you with a few sentences of what I believe. I believe that over the next few years, we'll see ideas popping up from all over the world, from all sorts of different people, from different backgrounds. Businesses that pop up in this period are more sustainable, more diverse, and more concerned with creating ethical businesses. The last crisis that we had in the Great Recession brought us Airbnb, Uber and Slack, to name a few, and I think this time will be no different, except the companies will be more ethical and more concerned with having a positive impact on the world. And that's it. This is a whistle-stop tour of forming your team. If you have any questions, I think we've got a few minutes left as well.
Yeah, we have some time, so if anybody have some question, please.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So I was speaking to someone recently because we've been advised to start looking for investment. And the way that they explained it to me was that myself and my co-founder, say, for example, we have a 50-50 split now, then we bring on a CTO and we decide it goes 50-50 plus another 50. Is that correct? And then dilutes down the more people get equity. I just found it hard to understand when that was.
Yeah, so it's always going to be 100%. But what often happens once you do raise investment, you set up an option pool. So you would have the traditional shares that you and your co-founders have, and then you would set up 15 or 20% that would be dedicated to new employees. So this is like larger businesses would have options that you automatically get as compensation. But for the CTO, I guess it's about, you need to decide whether they get 33%, whether you split it 33% each, or whether they get the option pool. But this is, yeah, you're right. This is, it completely depends on what you want to do in terms of how you want to incentivize that third co-founder.
Okay, so it's always 100% though.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So say you're starting off and you're the only founder, and you're seeking to bring people in. What I mean, you're giving the example of there's 3 people at the start. This is just the one, and you're looking for someone to join you, and you're really at ideation stage, and you put a lot of energy into getting it to the MVP stage, and then you know that you need to get more founders. How do you manage that situation, or what's the best way to do it? Is it the dynamic model, as you said there?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So most of our early adopters are actually solo founders who are now looking at exploring a co-founder, and I would say the best scenario in that case is more of a blended approach. So you would offer yourself a bonus for the work that you've done so far, so a monetary value attached to the work. So you would decide, okay, in the last year I've done however many hours, and so I think the work I've done is worth 20k, for example. Then you would have someone on board and you would offer them bonuses. That would probably be the best way to incentivize them. But like I said, you would have specific milestones that they were working towards, and then once they'd reach those milestones, you offer them that percentage. Because if you offer the equity up front, that can often lead to challenges if it's not a good fit in the end, and then you've given 10% away. So I'd say you have a specific goal that they're working towards, whether that's getting the MVP live, and then once they do that, then you give them that equity. That's probably the best way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And any other questions? I'll also leave my my email address in the chat if anyone has any that come up in the next few hours or days.
Yeah, I think if anybody has some question also for Sarah, just can address them right now, because we have some time before we will start the mentoring session. So please.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, of course.
So is SDG, is that a requirement now for venture capitalists? Will they, or any kind of funding from even like Enterprise Ireland, do they look for that in your company?
They are starting to. I would say it's not, if your idea is strong enough to them and it meets all the other criteria for Enterprise Ireland, they're not going to reject it. But I would say it makes a much stronger business case if you do have them in there, or if you have, something that says this is the problem that we're addressing and it's also contributing to these SDGs. See, actually, they've recently, the government's recently given a sort of pat on the back to Musgraves here, as a supermarket chain, for actually highlighting the SDGs, being an SDG champion, which, again, I suppose it's because Lidl and Aldi are doing it, that they felt peer pressure to do it. But I would just say the same exists in the startup world, that, most of those startups that already put that, the purpose and the why and what they're doing in terms of sustainability at the heart of what they do, are probably going to attract impact investors as well as, the regular venture capitalists, So, and actually the impact investors is probably what you want, because they're probably going to be looking at it from a slightly different perspective. And I don't know what Naïma's experience of that is, but I think, that most of those businesses are potentially the ones that you'd be more interested in yourself in terms of investing in the business.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah, thank you for the amazing presentation. Really appreciate. I just wondering, would you please share your presentation if you have the link, or send it to the organization, please?
Yeah. I'm going to send it on to Layla, and then she can send it out for the slide deck. But there's loads on the last slide. There are loads of those tools that people can use. So the B Corp guys made their own SDG impact assessment, so you can put your business through that and see what it picks out as the key SDGs. And that's quite a good way, actually, of looking at it from an investor point of view, because you're going to go through and you're going to go, okay, these are my areas, and so these are the bits. If I'm doing a deck to a team, then I can pick out these areas, and that's quite key, I think, when you're presenting to potential investors, that they can see at a moment's glance that that's what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
I can share my deck as well as after. I'll share it with Layla.
Yeah, thank you, Naïma. Thank you, Sarah. I want to ask our participants if they have any other questions. Okay, I think that's it for now.